Hi everybody, it's Miss Mills. We are going to start our comic strip story adventure today. This is an activity that is designed for you to work through in about 5 days. You can do it in 4, you can do it in 3, you could even do it in one day if you wanted to cram it all in. But I recommend that you kind of do it in chunks the way that I'm guiding you through it. This is from JCPS Choice Board number 4. The task says, create a comic strip. Think of an idea for a short adventure story that takes place either at school or at home. Plan your story, then write it in 6 boxes on a paper to create a comic strip. Use speech bubbles and drawings to tell your story. Include the characters, setting, problem, and solution. It says to use a piece of paper, and you can, but I am going to show you 3 different options that will be available to you, but not today. So here's how this activity has been broken down. So day 1, you're going to learn about the comic strips, and you're going to get a brief history, see a bunch of them in pictures and in a short video. And then you're going to complete a Google form. Day 2, brainstorm some story ideas using a graphic organizer, and then you're going to choose your topic. Days 3 and 4, possibly even 5, you'll create and submit your comic strip story. What is a comic strip? Let's watch a short video to find out.
Handheld, take-anywhere books filled with superheroes, classic stories, or adult dramas. Some of them originally sold for only 10 cents, but now go for millions. With stunning artwork and legendary storytelling, their pages have captivated readers for over 80 years. This is the history of comic books. Using images to communicate goes back to the 32nd century BC, when Egyptians devised hieroglyphs with over 1,000 images representing ideas. In the same way, tapestries told stories through scenes depicted on the lush textiles in medieval European times. Mass production of paper allowed for the next medium of sequential art to emerge. While printed forms of picture-based stories appeared in Europe prior, the first American example of a comic strip came in the form of The Yellow Kid. The Kid's creator, Richard Outcault, infused the comic with political and social commentary. Due to the popularity of The Yellow Kid, other comic strips soon appeared. In 1933, Famous Funnies collected some of the serialized newspaper strips into a book format. Although this collection included reprintings, many historians have deemed this publication as the first comic book. In 1938, the golden age of comic books began with Action Comics #1. This first appearance of Superman ushered in the cape and cowl popularity of the superhero. The Golden Age would give birth to many of today's beloved heroes, including Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Captain America, and Captain Marvel. Many of the heroes grew so popular that they became symbolic elements in the war effort in World War II, and comic covers often depicted heroes beating up Hitler. In 1956, Showcase #4 introduced the world to a new version of a DC comic favorite, The Flash. Thus, the Silver Age of comics began. During this time, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby at Marvel Comics would create some of the most beloved heroes, including Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, and the Incredible Hulk. Two publishers going head-to-head, Marvel and DC. While they battled for top billing, their characters appeared on television prime time in Saturday morning cartoons. In smaller presses like Pacific, Eclipse, and Fantagraphics, slowly entered into the market. The graphic novel also rose in popularity during the 80s. These longer works sometimes were printed comic story arcs, but many featured original, unseen material. This longer form allowed for more in-depth storytelling, and the dramatic content often won literary awards. When the 1990s hit, the comic book artists grew in celebrity status. Their popularity allowed them something hardly seen in the industry: a split from the big two publishers. Todd McFarlane, Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld, and Jim Valentino formed their own company, Image, and rocked the comic book world. Events like the death of Superman brought comics into the public eye like never before. With the comic codes an outdated form of censorship, publishers abandoned its use. As digital readers became more prevalent, the comic book took new shape in digital form. With comic book characters so identifiable, so many of the comic books we read are made into film. Popular shows like The Walking Dead also use comic books as their source material. And so there's no question that the comic book industry entered a new high point in its history. So the next time you grab your favorite issue or graphic novel, appreciate how far comic books have come since the concept of sequential art began back in ancient Egypt.
Okay, so that was a wonderful little video that showed a little bit of the history. I'm sure that you saw a bunch of favorite characters. I know that I did. So let's look at a working definition for a comic strip. It is a sequence of drawings and boxes that tell an amusing story, typically printed in a newspaper or comic book. In the background, you'll see a bunch of little comic strips there, like Foxtrot, and those were printed in a newspaper. In fact, that's an image of a newspaper comic strip printing. And when I was a child, we would get the Sunday newspaper, and I didn't really care much about the news. I wanted to go straight to the comic strip section and read it. That's what I did. I would always grab that out of the newspaper and then give it back when I was done to my family, and they would get a chance to read it. So just a little bit of background knowledge for you there. And so here are some other ones: just Wonder Woman, Black Panther, just a few favorites. All right, some comics come in black and white, like this Peanuts comic strip by Schultz, Charlie Brown, Lucy, Linus. Some in color. Some use mostly pictures, like this Garfield comic. Incidentally, they also used these words that are nonsense words that make sounds when you say them. So good readers call that onomatopoeia, and cartoonists will use these oftentimes to engage their audience. So, like if you say the word boink, it's not a real word, but it makes a funny sound and kind of adds to the humor of the comic. Most comics make use of dialogue using speech bubbles like this. And you can always tell which character is speaking. And thought bubbles like this, often in a cloud shape. That's how I always could tell the difference. Like I knew that he was talking because this was a smooth, round shape. And I knew that he was thinking because he had a cloud shape around it. It's not always the case, but that's certainly a pattern that I noticed. A more modern type of comic strip is the graphic novel, and a graphic novel uses more everyday characters who are human or personified within realistic settings and situations. And here are a few familiar examples that I've seen many of you reading. This is a Time for Kids article that if you click on this link, you can go straight to that article open it up to the title of the article called Inside the Rise of Graphic Novels. And it just gives you the author, Raina Telgemeier, gives you her perspective as to how she came up with her comic or her graphic novel series of Smile and Drama. Interesting read, but we're not going to take the time to do that here. And finally, I wanted to provide a little field trip, a little virtual field trip for you. And this is from a place called Toon Lagoon. And Toon Lagoon is just a section in a theme park. The theme park is a Universal Studios theme park called Islands of Adventure. They have a lot of rides, a lot of movie stuff, just a lot of fun. I lived in Florida for 16 years, and so theme parks were definitely a part of my life quite a bit, and this was one of my favorite parts of any theme park. And Toon Lagoon is basically comic strips like that has come to life. The engineers who created it and built it did an amazing job. And this little video will give you a tour through that little section. And I just found it fascinating and loved it. And I wanted to share that with you today. Again, this is something that you can kind of look at on your own, but definitely worth it. All right, your mission for today is to complete the Google form titled Comic Strip Day 1, which includes 5 very simple questions. In fact, 2 of them are as simple as what is your name and what is the date. The other 3 are about comic strips. You are even allowed to come back to these slides to help you answer them. Just make sure that you submit the Google form as instructed. And that's it for today. I thank you for joining me on this learning adventure, and I can't wait to see all of your hard work.